Daily vlogging made millions of teenagers feel like her best friend, eroding the boundary between a celebrity creator and an impressionable child. Welcome to the Dossier. Today, we're opening up the clinical architecture of digital relationships. We're bypassing the internet drama entirely to look purely at the science of human connection. And, well, what actually happens when meticulously constructed boundaries collapse. That quote right there, it perfectly captures the high-stakes reality we're analyzing in this explainer. This isn't just about entertainment, folks. We're looking at the real-world psychological consequences of unprecedented digital access. Because, let's face it, audiences today have an entirely different psychological relationship with the people on their screens, and it's fundamentally altering how we connect. Section 1, the parasocial illusion. So to really understand the modern influencer, we first have to understand the psychological illusion they operate within. We've experienced a massive psychological shift here. On one side, you've got traditional parasocial relationships, or PSR. This is a concept coined way back in 1956. It's that one-sided emotional bond you might form with a movie star or a late-night news anchor. You know them, but they have absolutely no idea you exist. But today, we've evolved to trans-parasocial relationships, or Now, for a trans-parasocial relationship to actually exist, it requires three core ingredients. First, collective reciprocity. This is where the influencer acknowledges the audience as a group. Second, interaction. This can be synchronous, like a live stream, or asynchronous, like replying to a comment hours later. And third, co-created relations, where the audience feels they actually have a real stake in the creator's life and content. They aren't just broadcasting at you, they're actively making you a stakeholder. And research published in Frontiers in Psychology shows this has a profound impact on tweens, specifically kids aged 9 to 12. Think about it. Because YouTubers shoot videos in their actual bedrooms and talk directly to the camera, they possessed a kind of social realism that traditional fictional characters completely lack. To a developing brain, the creator feels incredibly real, which rapidly accelerates the attachment process. Section 2, engineering trans-parasocial trust. Because these deep psychological mechanisms aren't just accidental byproducts of turning on a camera. Oh no, they're actively engineered. And this is brilliantly illustrated by research from Brigham Young University, which dug deep into the communication strategies used by digital influencers. They found that creators manage their relationships with millions of viewers almost like a massive public relations account, but they do it using highly intimate, interpersonal tactics. Creators rely on specific relationship maintenance strategies to foster what we call stickiness, that devout, unwavering fandom. By leveraging perceived authenticity, deliberate vulnerability, constant engagement, and self-disclosure, they create this intense illusion of intimacy. Just by using second-person language, saying things like, "I love you guys," or "look what we did," they effectively blur the line between a professional entertainer and a personal confidant. Let's break down this step-by-step psychological loop that literally transforms a stranger on a screen into a perceived close friend. It all starts with intimate self-disclosure, maybe sharing a personal struggle or just a mundane daily task. This triggers step 2, perceived authenticity. The viewer thinks, wow, they're just so real. That leads right into step 3, audience identification, where the viewer sees themselves in the creator. And finally, this results in a strengthened trans-parasocial bond. It's a cyclical, highly effective feedback loop of trust. And the format itself matters immensely. Academic studies found that daily vlogs are the single best genre for presenting self-disclosure and establishing that authenticity. Mathematically speaking, the daily vlog is the most effective format ever created for systematically dropping interpersonal boundaries. It simulates everyday life, making you, the viewer, feel like a fly on the wall in someone else's home. Section 3, the power imbalance. So, what happens when this highly engineered trust meets vulnerable demographics? We enter the territory of extreme power imbalances. Researchers actually refer to this as the illusion of the WeTube. You literally have millions of young fans experiencing pseudo-interpersonal communication. Think about the comment sections you scroll through. The platform's affordances create a dangerously high degree of social presence, making a massive public broadcasting environment feel like a private chat. The fan feels a mutual closeness, but structurally, it's still an unregulated space governed entirely by one person. To examine this impartially, let's look at a prominent case study analyzed in recent media literature. YouTube creator Colleen Ballinger. She faced allegations of inappropriate boundary crossing with young fans, and her own words actually provide fascinating insight into how these private interactions were rationalized. She stated, "It's kind of like when you go to a family gathering and there's a weird aunt there. That was me, but in group chats with my fans." This hits the nail on the head regarding the exact cognitive dissonance at play here, equating a fan group chat with a private familial relationship. So what are the objective elements that create such a severe power imbalance? Well, first, you have underaged audiences who simply lack the media literacy to recognize when a boundary is being crossed. Second, you have private group chats that mask themselves as exclusive fan engagement, which ends up isolating young followers. And third, the creator has total, absolute control over the narrative and the access. Impressionable fans are fundamentally unable to recognize when a trusted, idolized creator steps over the line. Section 4. Crisis and Apologia. Let's move on and see how this builds when carefully constructed parasocial structures face a massive public scandal.
To analyze this objectively, we use situational crisis communication theory, or SCCT. This is the academic baseline for how organizations and public figures are traditionally advised to handle crises. It involves strategic frameworks to manage reputational threats by either shaping how people attribute the crisis, changing perceptions of the person involved, or reducing the negative effects generated.
But in the digital influencer space, clinical PR theory is often tossed out the window for something much more unconventional. In response to her crisis, Ballinger released a song featuring the lyrics, "All aboard the toxic gossip train, chugging down the tracks of misinformation." This starkly juxtaposes standard, formal crisis management against a highly informal, musical response video titled "Hi," recorded right in her home with a ukulele. When researchers neutrally analyze this response video through the lens of SCCT, they find standard tactics heavily disguised as informal content. Instead of a traditional apology, the video functions as an offensive maneuver. It attempts to shape the crisis attribution by deflecting blame onto the audience for spreading misinformation. It frames allegations of systemic power abuse merely as social ineptitude, just being a loser or a weird aunt. And it actively adopts a martyr persona, framing the creator as the ultimate victim of public scrutiny.
So the crucial point is this: digital creators in crisis often bypass professional PR entirely. Why? Because they can weaponize the parasocial bond they've spent years engineering. They speak directly to the camera, using the exact same intimate framing they always use to directly leverage that established audience trust. By doing this, they attempt to pit their most loyal fans against their accusers, delegitimizing critics, and using perceived authenticity as a shield against accountability.
Section 5, the dependency question. We've looked at the viewer and the creator, but there is one more vital layer to this ecosystem. Research highlights that we also have to consider the children within the videos themselves. The medium's relentless demand for constant, intimate content puts the mental health of kidfluencers at significant risk in an entirely unregulated space. It's a dynamic we all consume, often without even realizing the psychological toll it takes on the families participating in the broadcast. Which leaves us with this powerful, overarching question to consider. Based on the psychological mechanisms of hyper-personal sharing, the intentional engineering of trust, and the profound power imbalances we've documented, does the medium of daily vlogging inherently create unsafe parasocial dependencies for young viewers?
Subscribe for media psychology dossiers.